greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. I'm your long-winded, speech-loving captain, Myrriah Gossett, and with me on the view screen we have... Oh, Clyde, you've muted yourself.
I do that from time to time. It's Clyde Haynes. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
Can't handle the truth.
And Judge Advocate Paul Satachet. There we go. I'll sell for that.
Perfect. Tonight, if you haven't picked up on it, we will be discussing the second episode of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, Ad Astra Per Aspera, directed by Valerie Weiss and written by Dana Horgan. But just a few reminders first. Paul, can you tell people where they can find the podcast or share it?
Hey guys, you can subscribe to our podcast at Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love our content, and we hope you do, please consider joining our Patreon for just $2 per episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Indeed.
I think that was pretty good.
You did it, Paul. You made it the whole way through.
I had to get myself genetically modified in order to do that. It's going to impact my application to Starfleet, but don't worry about it.
Paul's a Mahdi.
Well worth it. Clyde, if folks are hanging out with us tonight in the live on YouTube, how can they interact with us?
Telepathy. Just
telepathy.
Think it, and we'll know what you're saying. No, seriously, if you are watching us live on YouTube and you have a comment, a question, you just want to say hi, what's up, like Anne-Marie in the chat, all you need to do is type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod, and we will take a look at your question or your comment. We may even read it live on the show. And when that special times comes up, you'll know what it is. Just type capital H, capital F, capital HF, and we'll take a look at your thoughts in general about this week's episode.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think it's time to hit that bell twice. Ding, ding. AKA the Star Trek dun dun. And get ready for some hot freaks.
Hot freaks! Hot freaks!
Indeed. If this is your first time joining us, also welcome. We don't do hot takes here. We do some hot freaks. So, Clyde, what was your hot take, hot freak about this episode?
Loved this episode. I mean, man, little bit of a Law and Order take, little bit of a Star Trek. No Harry Kim, but that's just a Voyager reference because it feels like Harry Kim was always on trial. But no, I really love this. I mean, I thought it was done really, really well. The first time through, I just couldn't stop. I was like really on the edge of my seat. I feel like we got some background on Una, on this world that we've been in, and I always appreciate a good Star Trek episode that forces me to go dig deep into the research over at Memory Alpha and go, okay, I need to brush up on my eugenics war and understand why this was such a big deal. So I really enjoyed this episode and a nice little twist at the end. So one of my favorite episodes since we've begun kind of this new series, the new series. I really did enjoy it.
Paul, thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously this is the worst episode since, ever, right? No, I think the episode's great. I think it's a good testimony, and that's a good, successor to Measure of a Man in TNG with Data when Data was on trial. I think this is a very it ranks up there with that, and I think Measure of a Man is probably top 10 episodes of all TNG. Yeah. So I think it's really it's always really good to see a good moral debate about the status of humanity, because what is a person, what's right, what's wrong, all because that's ultimately what all Star Trek is, right? Some version of hey, we can do better, and in this episode they literally say it.
Yeah, I to jump in, I was literally the last big metaphor they jump in is Star Trek shows us the future is possible.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, we'll get into it. But was that your summation?
Yeah. Like 30 seconds. I don't take these like 45-second hot freaks like Clyde. I stick to the.
As much as we all loved Mike used to go on for quite a few minutes for his hot freaks. So always like to check in. But yes, my hot freak is, first of all, Myrriah, who is performing, the performer by Yatide Badaki. I think that's how you say her last name. But incredible guest star as Nira. I think is my hottest freak. Those shoulder pads, incredible. I think this was a very classic Trek courtroom episode. There were some really great performances. I don't know if it'll be one that I go back to rewatch over and over again, but I thought it did what it needed to do, and I enjoyed the ride. So yeah, I was here for it.
Yeah, I would agree, Myrriah. Like so I've watched it a couple times now. The first time, like I said, edge of my seat, it was great. The second time through, I was like, this is good, but I know what's going to happen. And so that's the tough part with these like whodunit mystery court episodes, is when you have the big reveal, especially when it hit you like it hit me.
Mm-hmm.
You know it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, this is good. And I really did enjoy the second time through, but how are they going to get through? Like, what's going to happen? Because I think one of the things that was great about this is, until the end, I don't know about you guys, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, they looked like they were on the ropes. I mean, she was attacking everybody. Like, I was like, I mean, Pike's going down and she's gone after April. Like, how is this going to tie together? And then they did it in a way that I was like, dang, that was slick.
It was a good mic drop at the end there.
Yeah.
I did just want to say, because we're going to be having this discussion about like you were saying, Clyde, like I dug into like the Star Trek lore of the eugenics world and all of these things. And I just wanted to say that, like, obviously eugenics and augmentation that removes diversity, people with disabilities, is not okay. And I'm just going to toss that out there because
I'm glad you said it, Mark, because I was wondering. I was like, what kind of captain am I following here? Like,
Yeah, I was like, they're using this metaphor, for a multitude of representation, which we'll get into. And I enjoyed the way that they wove that and how they used. I thought Una's testimony was like a very powerful message. Ultimately, was like a really great way to kind of signify and hold that mirror up to what's happening right now. But I've definitely seen a lot of like Trek fans with disabilities being like, oh no, not again. Like, we're here for this discussion. And so I just wanted to put that at the top, that like, I'm not saying like, yes, we should justice for eugenics. That's not what I'm here to say at all. So just to put that down at the top. But to dig in, I do think it was a very effective metaphor to use the Illyrians, I will say, not eugenics and not augmentation.
We can just stop saying eugenics. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, thank you. I do think they're using the Illyrians as a very interesting metaphor, like specifically for what's happening right now, for trans people and bans that are happening, and people being forced to go back into the closet or back into the darkness, not living as themselves. I thought there's also a lot of smart metaphors, and both visual and in the dialogue around anti-Semitism and some of the parallels that they drew, between Nazi Germany and then, also currently the laws that are preventing people from getting rightful asylum here in the US. So just to toss that all out here at the top.
Just a light little episode, just watching it.
Just a light peppering.
That's right.
But yeah, I, now that all of that is sort of out of the way, I wanted to start out by talking about the relationship between Pike and Una, and kind of how that both starts and ends the episode, right? Is this like ability to go out and get the best lawyer for Una, but then Una, is having to really toil at the end if she's going to essentially get Pike in trouble as she's on the stand. And so I wanted to see, Paul, what you thought about Clyde will be right back for those watching the live stream. But yeah, what did you think?
I mean, I think I think the two of them have a very strong bond, right? They're super friends. They're family. They talk about that a lot. Like Una is family. and and though Laan says it, like you know that it's Pike, right? Pike is the person who's like, she's my sister, I'll do anything for her, kind of thing. And then I think that's really good, and and they all, and Una like ultimately wants to protect him, with the reveal of that she turned herself in. Like that's actually even more important, because like if she's doing this gambit kind of thing, like then for Pike to be caught up in the wake, that would be unacceptable.
Yeah. And I think, I was a bit on the edge of like what's going to ultimately happen, especially because they did. I thought the moment between Pike and April, and then April and the rest of the court, and how like he is someone who is like, I've had to use these judgment calls. Like, yes, the rules have to bend, and ultimately leadership is the one who has to take that. So I thought it was a smart, like pre-set up at the beginning of the court case to then get to the end.
Well, she's the best, one of the best civil rights lawyers in the quadrant, at least, in probably galaxy. So
Well, let me ask you this, Paul.
Uh-oh.
Did you think that
I could handle the truth?
No. I know you can handle the truth, but you mentioned like the reveal that Una turned herself in. Did you think for a second? Did you think that Laan did it?
No, because Laan would have known that she had done it. Like she was. I think, and as opposed to like maybe I did it. I think that for me, like although it works for the episode, I think like I don't really know why Una did it, in the sense that like she can have her own reasons that are off camera, but like in season 1, I don't see her struggling with it. So like so all of a sudden it becomes this big twist at the end of season 1 where I got caught in, but like that would have meant that she goes like, I turned my I leaked my identity out, like, and we see none of that. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it felt like she was like, well, one, I thought like they did a good job of her being like, I finally was done living in the dark, right? Like I needed to be my whole self, which I think is a good enough character reason. But I think the other one for me that was compelling was that she essentially was out to both Laan. I was like, if I read it, I mess it up.
Yep, same here.
And I think once she was out to her and then also to Pike, it's like how long before they get in trouble, right, for concealing the secret. And so I think that is when that ticking clock really started for Una.
No, I hear you. It's just I didn't get to see her struggle
100%.
with that. So that's if I just saw like in one episode, maybe the Gorn episode, like with the aliens going episode, like just one episode where she's like going, oh crap, I need to deal with this, and then I see it. But like I didn't see it.
The episode where the warp core is malfunctioning and she essentially has to absorb it all and that's when she's out to Laan. Like it's, to me, that is when that kind of starts, because I feel like she can kind of see that it's become an issue for her. Like their friendship, I think, then had a moment of distrust, and I think that was part of that motivation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to be very careful about using the term out, because I think that's a powerful word and I want to reserve it for a powerful place. But there is this sense of whole self, right? And being authentic and genuine. And, in the workplace, we always talk about, can you bring your whole self to work? And to which I say, no, never.
No, but never.
But the idea,
safeguard yourself.
the idea, the hope, that that desire to want to bring your whole self to whatever room you're in, that to me is one of those things that we look at in Star Trek and go, it's so aspirational that's where we want to be. And so I get, like, I did feel, and I've long thought about that episode where she had to, you've got this warp core breach and she's got to save people. Like she's got to say, do I disclose what I have in order to save people, right? Knowing what it means. That to me was very Star Trek. And so this desire to want to go, hey, I want people to know me, especially as I think, the ship, I much like a Voyager or TNG, it feels like we came together with the Enterprise as they were new mostly, right? And we're at that point in season 2 where it's a bit like their family. And she's going, hey, if this is really going to be my family, like if we're out here on a 5-year journey, which is never a 5-year journey. It's like a 3-hour tour. It's never a 3-hour tour. You want to be you. You don't like, it takes a lot of energy to hide who you are, right? Like,
unless you have a perfect cloak like me.
I'm just saying, like, yes, when I go to work every day, I show up and I look very professional, but I get tired of hiding the fact that I was playing Drake very loud in my car before I stepped into the parking lot.
No, like,
can't I just be me?
Nope. The answer, but to bounce off that, I totally understand her desire to be forward with who she is. But why did she have to wait till someone like got her to say it in court that she turned herself in? She could have just turned herself in. There's all this as far as the dramatic reason, I don't truly understand why it took Nira to go to get her to basically, I turned myself in. Like, why didn't she just do it from the very beginning? Like, I don't know. I don't understand that logic right now.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it from a storytelling perspective.
Yep.
But,
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I was like, oh, I get this as a writer, but yeah, no, I agree for the character motivation. It is interesting that while she did turn herself in, she chose not to disclose that as part of her reasoning of like, this is why I am the Starfleet officer that I am, right? I do think it adds to her character, but it was the nice cherry on top. It was perfect.
No, I get it. Like I was long for the ride. I mean, like I watched it like thrice, and when you on the third watching, like you go like, oh, people are just walking into rooms, yelling at each other, and then walking out. and you're in it for the conflict, but like what was that? Well, I thought you were in for the platform, blah blah blah, and I'm out.
Yeah, although I did appreciate some of these smaller moments in the episode that gave us some like glimpses into the other characters as well as a little bit of levity, because this episode was very heavy both in dialogue. There's no action, there's no pew-pews, there's no fighting. It's all just fighting of wits, right?
That's right. Like
but I loved the cafeteria scene.
100%. My favorite scene is Spock and what's his name?
I wrote down his Admiral Javis.
Yeah. So I thought that was great. I thought that was the funniest thing. Like Erica and Madanga. The doctor. Just
Mbenga, yeah.
Just hanging out. And I was going like, oh my god, this is totally what I would be doing. At a cafeteria or watching.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ortega's being like, oh yeah, that like mimicry was like so funny and 100%. Yeah, like when you're stuck on a starship with these people for years on end, you're just like, oh, I have worked on this impression.
Yeah. Like I made so many impressions of you, Myrriah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Like oh, there she is. She's gonna murder now. There.
But and the same thing, like the moment between Pike and Batel, when she's like, oh, I know you hate giving long-winded speeches.
That's
right. And then Pike and April as well, when April comes in and Pike's like trying to kind of be like, I'm really sorry I've put you in this position and I brought in this like lawyer who might take down your entire career. Whiskey? No? Okay, I'll just drink this all myself.
That's right. He pours himself. Well, that point where like what you call it, Patel and Pike were talking, and like Pike was talking about his like the speech, blah blah blah. Like my wife was watching it with me. She's like, "What the hell are you doing? You're giving her ammo. You're giving her."
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing to me about all of that was it's the fact that where we are in the Trek like timeline. So it's almost funny to us because you're looking at them freak out about where you're defying rule number 1, like this is everything, this is like the prime directive and you're going against it. And we sit back and laugh because if you think about our Trek history, right, like we're millennia ahead and we know, man, April, you're just the first. Like everybody, like
every captain of this ship.
Every captain, like, and basically when she read out your list, it's like, that's pretty good. Like, you're pretty tame. I mean, just wait, because when Kirk comes along, he's gonna throw it all out the window. So, not to mention the others. So it was interesting for me to see, like, wow, they were really freaking out about this thing that's not gonna matter very soon.
Yeah, no, but it's always, it's always one of those things where you have to have the rule so that it can be broken or like
Right.
bent, because like if you don't have that rule, then you have the Klingon War, for example. That's that's how they described it.
Yeah. Some stuff from the chat here. Firesign 331 says, Pod, it was a strong moment when Uhura stood up to Lon. I agree. I was
Yeah.
like, good job, first year ensign, standing up to your chief of security.
But in
I
a
thought
good way, though. The way she
100%.
did it was fantastic.
Respectful.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Was kind of funny though on the second watch. I realized, like, they'd get all the reaction shots of them all like watching the courtroom drama on their TV. I was like, oh, it's like we're watching them watching them watching. It was like a weird meta moment, but I liked getting to see everyone's sort of like emotional stakes in it, and the side glances and the looks. It did feel like there was a lot of like, we're gonna cut to Chapel anytime Spock is on screen.
Yes, I feel bad for Chapel because she had no lines in this.
Absolutely no lines in this episode.
Right. That's right.
I mean, even Spock didn't have very many lines. I mean, he told a joke. I guess to me, I was a little disappointed because they're all sitting there watching this courtroom drama, and I'm thinking, no popcorn. Like if you were if we were really doing this, you wouldn't just be sitting there like this. Even if it's your friend, you'd be like, especially something this entertaining, you'd be like.
I mean, but to them, it's not really entertaining, right? It's like them watching potentially their friend and their first officer get thrown to 20 years in a penal colony. Like,
true. I'm still going for the popcorn.
But so, Clyde, if you're ever on trial for 20 years, the
next season of Jury Duty will show up, and
I will definitely say, Clyde, don't worry, I'm here.
Hey, I want you to be at your full strength. So you get your munchies on, and you make sure that you don't, collapse. Drink some water. Like, be ready to come to my defense. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Every time you say something and you're done, I go, you can't handle the truth.
I did like, there was something, what's also fun about Strange New Worlds is getting to see them sort of rewrite the pre-Kirk history, right, in a way that we haven't seen. And so I appreciate that we've now fully cemented Admiral April as a previous captain of the Enterprise, because that also means for all of those people who quote unquote hate that Trek is woke, which I'm like, have you watched Trek ever before? That means, the previous captain was a black man in charge of the Enterprise.
I think to say a bald man. I was like, oh yeah, very progressive.
Very progressive, yes. But anyway, I saw some chatter online that were like, heck yeah, way to like really cement it into the canon. They can't remove it now. Like,
I mean, let me know when I like him. Like right now, he's the best thing about him is that he recommended Una. Okay. I'm still on the fence about April.
You're on the fence about everyone until they die, and then all of a sudden, I was always what's his name?
What's his name again, his name is Shaw. I like Shaw.
That's right. Yeah, you did not.
Are we April sus banner worthy? Is
a little bit
happening. Yeah.
I'm not quite saying that he's sus. Because to be honest, I'm gonna give him some. He gets points automatically for being a former captain of the Enterprise. Like that alone, I'm like, okay, like you're working in the positive. But right now, are you a great captain of the Enterprise? Because the rest of the captains of the Enterprise have been pretty outstanding.
Right.
Like, where are you in that lineage, right? Like, are you the forefather or are you just a dude?
Yeah, we get some flashback episodes, I think, to see Admiral April with, like a younger Pike and like young Una. I think that could be kind of cool to see some of that in the series. I did want to, I did think it was, okay, where do I want to go here? I want to talk about Myrriah, who was maybe one of the strongest guest stars we've had in the series thus far, besides maybe Captain, our pirate captain.
Oh, yeah.
From last season. Now I'm going to be really sad I'm blanking on her name. But yeah, I really enjoyed her performance. Also, all the Illyrian outfits and makeup were insane and incredible. I was like, I need every ensemble. I need every outfit. I need to learn how to do that crazy winged eyeliner. I've never wanted to do cosplay in my life until I saw these lawyer Illyrians. Captain
Angel, thank
Angel,
you.
thank
That's
you.
right. Too.
I was like, I wanted to say Captain April, and I was like, no, it's not April. We just talked about April. So Captain Angel, yes. Besides Angel, I think Myrrah is maybe one of my favorite guest stars we've had. I thought she did just an incredible job. And also I found it, a lot of her speeches were really moving and convincing. She always looked like she was like on the edge of just like an emotional outburst, but keeping it so just under the surface. And I really appreciated the performance. What did y'all think of Mira?
I thought she was great. I go I was very, I don't want to say proud of myself because I shouldn't be proud. Like, is that a Nigerian accent? And then
Oh yeah, she is Nigerian. Yeah,
and I was like, I did it. And so, but like, I thought that accent was really interesting because it felt, it's not a common accent for me. So I go like, oh, it feels different in a way that I'm not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And for like, a different planet, like, I thought that was really interesting. And she was just, she was very, deliberate and precise with her thoughts in a way that was like really, like, it was great to see. Like, everyone's on their heels dealing with her large personality and intellect. I thought that was really, I thought it was really fun. I think she was really fun. Had a lot of presence.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I thought she was a boss. And one of the things that I really appreciated was she shows up as counsel and dominated the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing about, like, as much as these courtroom dramas are always interesting, it's always homegrown, internal, like people who aren't lawyers, who aren't counselors, like, well, we're really smart. We're engineers and we're scientists. So we're going to go in here and we're going to mount a defense and we're going to win. Right. And this was somebody who came in externally and beat the Federation. Like, you don't see that very often. And so everything about her, from the moment she stepped on screen, the Illyrians by and large were just, it had a certain gravitas, a certain command. And I was like, I like this, right? The Federation isn't the most perfect society in the galaxy. Like, you've got this other group that's doing a fantastic job.
Like she comes in with with the attitude of like, you guys ain't all that. And she's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, I appreciate it. And I like that they were like, we understand that the Federation isn't perfect and that progress is slow and incremental, which I also appreciated in this. It didn't become like, it could have been really easy to write this as like this big storybook, groundbreaking moment, but then that wouldn't actually work either, because forward into canon, right? Like, we eventually see Bashir have to deal with this as well in Deep Space Nine. But I think it could be easy to be like, oh, this was this big one court case for Illyrians, like blah blah blah, which is what I thought they were potentially setting up, because that's how a lot of big groundswell civil rights cases are won now, right? It's like, oh, who's this model citizen that we can use as this example to get the rights of more people moved forward, right? So I appreciated that they were like, oh no, this is this one case, and unfortunately, like, the conversation is going to have to continue, right? So, and I thought that was a smart choice.
Yeah, it's I think that's it. I hate to say it. It preserves canon. Sorry, Myrriah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was like, we're gonna have to have the canon conversation. It's like,
but like, it's always very interesting to me, like, when I see someone who challenges the Federation as far as their ideals. Like, for example, you take the Dominion or the Klingons or the Romulans. Like, they all have, like, the Cardassians particularly, they all have a different way of approaching society. And you might not agree with them, but for them, they're like, oh, here's an alternative way of dealing with billions of people. But like, she comes in with this sense of like, you are failing at your own principles. And I think that's a really interesting, I haven't seen that before. You go like, you say you are this, you are failing at this, being, good people. You know, like, and I thought that was very interesting of saying, underlying, like, you know, for your own standards, you fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I thought that was really cool.
Well, I think, Paul, what I love about what you're saying is too often organizations, communities, societies can take this stance that we really are idealized, we know best, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should
Sure.
pay attention to us, you should follow us, you should be like us. And what's interesting about Star Trek is we know that by the time we get to TNG, by the time we get to Voyager for the most part, the Federation is such a pinnacle that it does become this utopia, if you will, right? Like we talk about the idea that there's no money, there's no hunger, like there's all these things have been eliminated. And so we seek after, like, man, I want to be a part of that society. Well, in order to get there, what you need is you need challenge. You need someone like the Illyrians to come in and say, yeah, you talk a good game, but what are you really doing? Like, look at, like, really challenging their beliefs. And it's that iron sharpening iron that allows you to actually change and grow. And I think that's what was so fascinating to me is, to your point, she came in there and said, you talk all this stuff that you believe, but let me point out all the ways that you fail, but not in a condemning way, but in a, here's your opportunity
Like, do
to
better.
actually to do better, right? And that challenge of, like, do better. When that comes from a peer, it's different than when it comes from someone you don't exactly respect, right? Or someone you look down upon.
Sure.
When it comes from a peer or mentor and they're like, do better, it challenges you. And I felt like the Federation at this moment was challenged to become the society that they will become one day.
Yeah. And I mean, we also see, I thought they did a good job of weaving in the fact that often it is fear at the root of a lot of these issues, right? It's fear of changes, it's fear of the unknown. And like Una is a great character to kind of display how she took fear and instead challenged it within herself to expand and become a better person. And in turn, she's asking the Federation to look at how it is looking at its own fears based on history, based on things that have happened to them in the past, but understand that you can't always have sweeping rules in place that's going to continue to benefit all of these societies, right? I think in the same way that we often today see fear of, immigrants, quote unquote, coming into different countries and asylum seekers. And I'm really glad that ultimately it ended with an asylum seeking kind of storyline, because I think that is one of the most prominent things kind of happening currently. And to no one's surprise here, I always love when Trek is making commentary on what's happening right now.
So, Myrriah, what do you think of Marge's comment here? How does Lon get a pass?
Well, so she's descended from those people, but she's not actually genetically modified. But I that was another scene I particularly enjoyed, was between Leon and Nira, was when she was like, just because you're descended from people who have done violence does not mean that you in turn will do the same thing. And I thought that was a really wonderful moment between the two of them. Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I felt like she spoke life into Lon, right? Like it almost like something broke in her, right? This secret, this worry that she was carrying. Like sometimes you just need someone to speak into you, that thing that you've been fearing and holding on to, so that it can break off and you can move a little differently. And I felt like that's what happened in that moment. Lon was like, no, I'm not a monster. Like these things that people fear about me or fear about my lineage, my name is not who I am.
Yeah. I did want to ask y'all, and this could just be me always searching for what I want to see in Star Trek, but did you think there was a vibe between Una and Mira? There's a lot of extended hand holding.
There is a lot of extended hand holding.
And some like longing looks.
like the answer is like maybe inconclusive.
Right. I was like, it could be like the start of something, or it could be absolutely nothing. But
well, like they were really close friends, right?
Right.
And ultimately, like B and I were having a discussion, and it goes like, why didn't Nira like go to the non Illyrian side? Because I don't know what I can't see her modifications, and I go like, well, she talks about how not everyone could hide it or choose to hide it, and I think
Right.
like she had the option of choosing to hide it, and she didn't, and that's what probably is why they broke up as friends, because like there was a fundamental disagreement about that. That said, like she was a kid.
Right. I was like, it seems like your family's really made this choice, which I understand can breed that like it was probably also resentment of like,
Mhm.
oh, you got to keep your identity and go live in hiding, and my family chose to kind of like stay.
Yeah,
Um,
but
and I can see how that resentment builds, right?
sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I didn't get a chemistry thing. I thought they were best friends.
Mm.
Like they were like family. And the parallels that I was drawing in my head is it's like it's this is just kind of how I felt it, I'll say. Is it's two people who grew up in a neighborhood in an impoverished community, and they're really close. And as they're going through, these hardships, they lean on each other. And then at one point, one family gets to
Gets a pass.
Mm-hmm.
they get a pass. They get to leave, right? They get to pretend for a little while that they're not who they are, right? And it's kind of like, wow, there's this resentment, almost in order for me to be able to do what I have to do, you're almost dead to me. Like you've done something, and maybe you didn't do it on purpose, but you're living this life that is a lie and completely contradicts who I am, right?
And my
And I thought
struggle.
it was, and my struggle, and I thought
Mhm.
like, I'm just going to put it out there, like from a race standpoint, when in the African American community, when we think about colorism, right, and
Totally.
your complexion, right? Look,
Yeah.
if you meet me, I'm a black man, right? But I got to tell you, there are people in my family who you might not be so sure about. And so that ability, like, oh, well, you don't really understand what it's been like. Like, I think that can tear at people. And I think that's what I saw. And I think this was an episode where they came back together and go, oh, I'm seeing you a little differently because your experience isn't what I fantasized it to be like.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think they were not thinking about that as well, Clyde, when they cast, like
Mhm.
the actress to play opposite Rebecca Romaine, because I think there is like that conversation of privilege, and like they kept using the terms like passing and like being able to, what does that look like when you don't look like the community that you're a part of that is being oppressed, right? And what does that look like within privilege within society? So I thought, yeah, to agree to your point, I think there was purposeful casting done for this episode to kind of bring that forward as well.
So let me ask you guys this, because like obviously the episode is really great. It's a great metaphor. Blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah. Now, let's say you're the Federation. Do you allow genetic modification?
Oh, I think that it's like it's almost similar to the conversations we're having around AI right now, obviously in a
Sure.
very different way, but it's like, what are we putting in place to safeguard things? And like, I think it's
Sure.
something that is more complicated than just a yes or a no, right? Because it's
Like
like,
we're actually on the cusp right now. We have CRISPR.
right,
We can genetically tailor at will now, like targeted editing, and like we can I could get the best person who has the best endurance for art cardio endurance or longevity and strength, and also just make one super soldier person, and then just like just repeat that. Does that person just do so much better in our society, and his or her lineage just like keeps on until we wipe out everything, and then we lose all diversity? I don't know. That's what they're afraid of, right?
right. Yeah, that is the slippery slope of it all, right? Is it like, oh, we found a way to remove the cancer gene? Like that
Mhm.
sounds incredible. And like,
Mhm.
that sounds great. But then is it
And now
like,
you get cheaper life insurance, or you get cheaper like medical insurance because you don't have the cancer gene.
Yeah, but
right,
that's a long way away from going, all right, I'm going to now eliminate all short people.
right. Or
Is it that long way? Because like as a parent, would you go like, oh, you know what? I have the ability, like this is what you
I
call
think
it.
it's also within the formation of capitalism we're in right now, right?
Oh,
Who's
sure.
going to afford these things at the
Like,
moment? You know
like,
what I mean?
like, we're at the cusp of Gattaca right now, right?
Right.
That's
Like,
what I was thinking too, Paul.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're definitely there. Like, and there like there are the United States is one that goes like, oh, there won't be genetic modification on on humans. That we're not going to do that. But we know that's happening, right?
Right. Like
Somewhere around.
rich people are doing all of those things. Yeah. I was like, I don't
So
know.
we're already living in it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying we it just hasn't hit that peak yet. So, like, like I understand why the Federation chooses to do what it does. It's
Oh,
and
100%.
and Cisco says it's best, like in Deep Space Nine, it say it best, like, it's not a perfect solution, but it, at the time, it seemed to be the best one that we had.
Right. And I do think there is an interesting conversation though for folks like Una, right? Like Una did not choose to have these genetic modifications done to her, right? Like it was just a part of what she was born into. And I do think that is like, are you persecuting the people who continue to do these things that might in turn devolve into devastation and war? Or is it like, like, are you always answering for the sins of your ancestors, right?
Sure.
Like, what does that look like throughout time? And what are you always trying to push forward?
Like in Bashir, like when we deal with Bashir in Deep Space Nine, like his dad took the heat. 'Cause, like it's
Yeah.
it's always just like but like I look at it and like if I were a parent, and I had the option of like picking the whole like con buffet, I go like yeah, like live longer, be stronger, be smarter, be faster, like
Interesting.
all that stuff. Like wouldn't you want that for your kid? I don't know.
I don't
Like
know.
I'm not a
I
parent.
mean, I don't think I would, but I also am not someone who wants to have children. So I fully can't answer that question.
I mean,
But I'd like to think I wouldn't.
If there's only a father on the podcast who could speak to that, like a person.
Don't put this all on poor Clyde
No,
to
but
answer for all parents right now.
In my life, I have been asked to answer for all of insert people group
That's
many
right.
times, but this is not going to be that case.
Mhm.
What I will say is it's interesting because one of the conversations that's been happening in my household this week is my children, particularly my 5-year-old, has been asking me like, whose nose does my nose look like, right? Who, whose ears? So he's starting to notice, and so we're having this conversation. And to your point, like, look, I'll be honest, I have sleep apnea, not as bad as one of my sisters, right? But it's kind of clear to me that a little bit about the way my nose does not necessarily help that. So if you're asking me, would I eliminate that? I'm not sure because it's also my nose, right? And so I like the idea that my children have, maybe they have, my wife's nose and my ears or things like that. Like, I don't know that I want to eliminate those things that make us who we are, right? There are things that, yeah, there's some health characteristics that are part of my genealogy that we want to be careful of. I don't know that there's an easy answer.
Well, like there's this marathon.
But I don't want it to be. I think what I don't want is designer genetics.
But like
right?
And my question is like, why don't you want that? Because I'll go full lore. I'll go full dark side. Okay, there's this guy out there. Like I saw he has a mutation where he basically doesn't create lactic acid in the same way, so that like he can just run forever. He's basically Captain America as far as like, wouldn't you want your kid to have that?
But like, what other purpose does lactic acid provide? I feel like a lot of these things that people are like, get rid of this thing, but then it's like,
I hear you.
What is the full domino effect? And I don't know if we know the full domino effect.
This is fair, but like but give us 100 years and we could probably get a better picture. And then at that point, wouldn't you want the buffet designer gene kind of? I don't know.
I guess here's the thing: is at this point, I don't trust people enough, to be honest with you.
Sure.
right? I feel like people have a way to weaponize just about everything, right? And I if you'd asked me 20 years ago, my answer might be different. But now I'm 20 years older, and what I see is people have weaponized everything around them. Like turn it into a sales funnel, right? A way to distinguish this group from that group. I mean, literally here in LA, we had a whole group of people that were lying and cheating to get their children into college. Like people will weaponize everything. And so if you're asking me, do I want to enter into a world where people are weaponizing genetics? No, I think we're going to end up in the eugenics. I think that's exactly where we're headed.
I think that's ultimately, though, the base answer, though, Paul, is I would say no, because we live in a society that ultimately is controlled by like if we were in I was like, this is so many what ifs to get to anywhere close. But it's like if it was a place where we're saying like, I just feel like it's then going to be like, oh, is there potential that my child might be disabled? Like, and that eliminate, like, to me, that is not a world I want to live in, where we're eliminating all diversity of people and thoughts and ideas and experiences of this world. And the other thing is ultimately the people who are going to be in control of this technology are probably going to be white supremacist pieces of shit. And it's just going to end terribly, because we've seen what happens when people think there's one particular way that is stronger, right? Because who's to say what genetics, quote unquote, are strongest?
Like I'm disappointed because you think it's going to be white supremacist, but I really trust the mercilessness of Asians. like I'm like Genghis Khan, Asian. But
oh Lord, okay.
But the point being is like so I do really understand why the Federation picks this.
Right. I think the ending is smart when they say you can't make a full blanketed statement in regards to Illyrians, in regards to people who have been genetically modified. Like it's going to have to be that like the final, big speech from the judges table was like, it's got to be nuanced. It's complicated. There is no one perfect answer. Right.
There rarely is. And,
right.
I had a mentor who once told me, he said, you can't give a thin answer to a thick problem. But that's what we try to do all the time, is we try to give this tweet, right? This bullet point to something that's crazy complicated. And I think this is one of those things where you have to really look into, and it's probably a case by case basis. And you have to look for, where it makes sense and where it doesn't. But to Paul's point, I understand why they're saying, hey, this is why we've set this standard. And again, I think it's based out of fear. And the question that the Federation has to ask themselves is, are we ready? Now, I ultimately think we kind of sort of get there at some point, because I mean, data is all augmentation if you think about it. No, like he's completely synthetic, and we get to a point where, but then you have the synthetics for it. Like this is a situation that's not gonna be resolved anytime soon. Like it's gonna evolve, if anything.
I mean, ultimately, we've seen where this ends up, where it gets to the ultimate life form, and it's peanut hamper.
There it is.
Phaser set to Clyde.
also completely synthetic. But I mean, actually, Paul, when you said that, what I thought was the Borg, right? Mm-hmm. The Borg is ultimately like, we're going to be one master race. We're going to assimilate all things. We're going to take what we want.
We're getting all the good stuff.
We're going to discard the stuff that we don't want. And we're going to make ourselves, we're literally going to augment ourselves to have a hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a tough thing, because there's in the span of human history, there's always been a version of survival of the fittest, right? We're all, and so what people don't like is when it goes like, oh, you aren't the fittest, so you die. People don't like the sound of that for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, I think you then, is it really I don't know. It's like, then is it really the fittest? Because then you're lacking so much perspective if it's always just one perspective, right?
I look at myself and I go like, oh man, before I turned like 47 or whatever, I had 15-20 vision, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. Like, I could have made an archer, but in today's day and age, great vision, no advantage. I got no use out of my vision aside from no glasses for 40 some years. And now so when you say survival of the fittest, it really depends on whatever. Absolutely, this is an example of where here is a genetic a genetic advantage that means nothing in this context. When do you need perfect vision? Nowadays you don't, right?
I mean, because we've made glasses an acceptable form of I'm losing the word that I'm trying to say, but like having to wear glasses is is like a quote unquote acceptable disability in society, right?
Sure. Yeah, and now they even accept LASIK in fighter pilots. Before they didn't do that, and now they do. So our technology, but we're still picking traits to permeate into the future. Like, it might not be vision, might not be the important trait anymore. It might be compassion, for example, or empathy. That might be more going forward. But we're always picking something, and by picking something, we're losing something generally, because there's only so many kids that are going to be born. It's just interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it. We're trying to save everyone, and I don't know if everyone gets saved because of how. Wow, this is really dark. I apologize, everyone.
Yeah, I was like, God damn, Paul.
I'm really sometimes I go nonlinear a little bit. Anyway, I'm back in the penalty box.
You're fine. I mean, I think that's why these episodes, like so many of the Trek courtroom episodes, I think hold such a place for so many fans, right? Is because they spark these very deep, long conversations about what makes us all human is usually at the core of what a lot of these these episodes are, and what is life mean, and what is the soul of a person. So I think it is bound to get dark. Bound to get dark. Because what is life without darkness to show us the lightness? That's right.
There you go. Let the contrast the light.
Yep.
But I like the happy stuff.
Yeah, the happy stuff is nice. So speaking of some happy stuff, I thought there was some cool production things I just wanted to share. So the set is actually the Federation headquarters from Discovery. So they reused that set.
Good.
And added the rosewood paneling, and apparently all of those sculptures behind them of court scenes were all hand sculpted and painted to give it kind of that warmth, regally tone to it. So I thought that was cool. And then the chair, which has the glowy light on it, is a TOS reference to the courtroom for court martial. And it was kind of like a bit of a lie detector, which I thought was interesting in Federation, sort of canon, that we've decided that an on chair lie detector is necessary for perjury.
It's great because it's canon. It's all in the TOS, right? You have two episodes. There's the menagerie where they do that, and then there's that episode where Scotty is framed for murder by some entity.
Oh yeah. What else? Oh, and then the person on the main court council, the character Zeus Tagol, is played by David Benjamin Thompson, who also plays Linus on Discovery. He's played a lot of deep makeup characters, so I thought that was good old Sneezy Linus.
Sneezy Linus.
And then I felt like there was something else. Just a shout out to Bernadette Croft. Like I've said, I loved all the costumes in this episode, and she's the costume designer. So I thought that was really good. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I liked the most was of this episode was kind of Una's speech about how seeing a diverse cast or diverse crew of people from a starship gave her hope that she could one day be in the stars. And I was like, Oh, dang. They're being like, this is why Star Trek is important, y'all.
This is you see this nose? Let's be on it.
Right there. We're going to be right there. I did also think it was interesting, and this could be me reading like far too into it, but the fact that they, I know it's like the story of Una, so it's like whoever they cast as Una was going to be portraying this, but it is interesting that it's like a white woman presenting white woman is used as this like big civil rights push of like, oh, this is our ideal version of this person for us to be able to make these court cases happen. And so often that is true. It's like a lot of civil rights cases, if the person who they're bringing to like the Supreme Court isn't like the squeakiest, cleanest person, like I remember when marriage equality was going forward, it was like, oh, this is a couple, like it was this lesbian couple who had been together for like 50 years. It was like, how idealized of this person can we be, and like, it can't be a messy person to come and represent, the rights of humanity at the court.
Because messy people don't deserve rights, apparently.
But luckily the squeaky clean people give us messy people some rights. But it I thought it was an interest. I don't know if they meant it, but I found it to be an interesting commentary in parallel. But yeah,
I think it just fell in their lap. Like Una was going to be like it was played. She was played by Roddenberry's wife, right?
Right. Yeah.
Michelle Barrett. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so, like, to keep the canon.
No, 100%. So it was like we knew we were eventually going to get there, but I, kind of going back to what you were mentioning, Clyde, about I think there was like definitely a purpose to in them casting Myrriah and like having that parallel between the two characters there of like the one who got out and the one who didn't, and who's had to struggle to get where they are a little bit more than the other. So I thought that was interesting. What else in this episode, y'all? I
got a question for you.
Yeah.
We'll say it covers the first 2 episodes. We haven't said his name. Do you guys miss Himmer, the former chief of engineering?
I miss the companionship he provided for Ahura in some ways, and I felt like he definitely had like a lot of great character perspective. I think it's still a little early in the season for me to decide. It is like definitely a miss in the bigger ensemble moments, because I think he had some really great humor and usually had some really great lines as a character, but yeah, I haven't decided as of yet.
For me, Clyde, no.
Yeah.
I think also I'm still excited about Pela.
Okay.
Well, so I thought I was gonna miss him. Like when he died, I was like, how could you do this? Like, how does this work? What are you gonna do? How do you replace him? But here we are with the second episode, and I barely remember, right? And what I had to ask myself was, okay, well, why is that the case? And so I started to realize is that I wasn't really excited about this, grumpy curmudgeon chief engineer. Like typically, if you think about the engineers, B'Elanna Torres aside, they typically are.
B'Elanna Torres.
I love B'Elanna, but I think B'Elanna was different in the fact that they usually are big energy people, right? Like they're kind of they're an interesting culture carrier of the cast. And I just don't know if Himmer had that, right? And so I'm looking at Pela and going, oh man, she feels like she's gonna fit right in. I could see how you can go from her to a Scotty, right? To an eventually a Geordie. Like they're people that you root for and you like, and they're a little quirky, but ultimately you want to be around them. And so I'm, and I was just thinking back to like those cafeteria scenes and looking like this is the crew. And, except for, the one person on the con whose name I can't remember because, she's new. And to Paul's question last week, what does she do? Largely, I'm looking like this is the family. This is the family that Una was talking about. And Pela seems like she fits into that family. I'm very curious about how they evolve her character over the next few weeks.
Like for me, like to go on that, like, do you guys ever watch Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
So do you remember the first 2 seasons? Like we didn't have Adam Scott, we didn't have Rob Lowe, we had Paul Schrader,
The guy who plays
yeah,
the
the dude.
engineer, an engineer, funny enough. Yeah.
And so like I think it's actually very hard to create a curmudgeon character if you want to hang out with people. Like it's not because like it's not easy to go like, oh, I want to hang out with that bummer. It can be done, but like it's really it's not a very easy type to have, especially if you want to hang out with an ensemble. Because like name a bummer that you like to watch. Like I got one, like House maybe. House, but House is so smart and he's so funny and he's so cutting and he's the main character that like that you accept him. So if there was a show called Hemmer, like, and he was just like in the engineering and you saw him just like shoot people down and like with his like blind stare, like I think that would be it. But like in an ensemble, I don't think it works as well.
Paul, I like your point. It's like if you're gonna be, for lack of a better word, the grumpy jerk, you're so good at what you do that you're the star, right? And everybody else kind of orbits around you and puts up with the grumpiness, because at some point you're gonna wow everybody, right? That is your House, that is your Bull, that is like these characters where you're just like,
that's the only reason why people like hang out with me, because I'm just so good at everything I do. And they deal with my cuttingness and
I mean, I feel like a little curmudgeon-y is never too bad, but yeah, to your point, I don't think they ever play like a big part in a larger ensemble. I was going to say April Ludgate gives that kind of vibe as far as the Parks and Rec thing, and then like Ron Swanson also has like the begrudging kind of grumpiness, you know what I mean? But it's like
hilarious though, like
right. So it's like it's got to be that balance.
Satire is off the charts though with Ron Swanson,
right? But that's also a comedy, so it's like everything has to be heightened to a certain degree for that to work in that way. But yeah, we'll see how. I feel like she can really bring the laughs. I think because she seems like a very quirky character, so I'll be excited to see.
I feel like they're
fun storming the castle.
Exactly. I feel like they're just making friends in space.
Friends in space.
I mean, that's what I feel like. That's what they're doing, because like everyone's getting their moments, and it's all like real. Like just like the cafeteria scene was so on point for what it needed for longevity, as far as like for the series. It's like here's just two people eating like a meal together, watching another crewmate, and just fucking around. Whoops.
Yeah.
And it's just so it speaks to like the coffee shop of friends or whatever. Just the hangout of.
Yeah, I think they're doing the ensemble nature of this show is definitely my favorite part, because and I saw someone on Twitter posted this. It was like yet another episode where we didn't see like a ton of Pike, right? And I'm not like, oh my God, I miss Pike. Where is Pike? It's like I'm really enjoying having all of these amazing characters to kind of have fun with and go on a ride with.
Yeah, it makes me hope, and I know this probably won't happen. It makes me hope that this will be the Star Trek show that they don't have a season number in their head. Right.
I mean, they could easily, go on for quite a long time, especially because, like, it's you don't have to keep jumping in time very far to keep the adventures rolling. And I did see like next week. I don't know if y'all watched the preview in the Ready Room, but we're finally getting some Kirk action on the bridge. But it looks like it might be a little bit of a timey-wimey adventure. So I'm excited for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Because Kirk never goes back in time.
Timey-wimey adventure? That never happens.
I know. Never, ever.
Hey, here's all I got to say about that. Hey, Lon. How you doing?
Sup, Lon? Lon is doing good, looking good, having a great season thus far, I think.
Yeah, no. That's awesome.
Anything else, y'all?
I think I've overstayed my welcome. Again.
It's probably time for us all to beam out of this podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. We will be back next week to talk even more Strange New Worlds. Which Kirk, PW Gregory asked. Not Sam Kirk. James Tiberius Kirk will be on the bridge. But good question. Yes,
JT Kirk.
JT Kirk will be back, as we will be next week. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and Spotify. Visit StarTrekPod.co to find links to that in our Patreon. Share the show with a friend. We appreciate it. Clyde, where can people find us on the internets?
At Star Trek Pod.
Do it on Twitter. We're still over there, even though it's a dumpster fire every day. But we're sharing some fun memes. We're sharing some thoughts.
It's a core breach.
There's a core breach happening, but we're trying to hold on for dear life as we can. We'll see you all next time. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Not my Kirk.